This is the strategic analysis of the company Merck. Merck is the oldest still existing pharmaceutical company in the world. It was founded in 1668 in Darmstadt in Germany, and it is still largely owned by the founding family Merck. Since it's a pharmaceutical company, the main customer need is obviously health. And the company has 3 different business units, which are healthcare, life science, and performance materials. The healthcare department can be divided again into the consumer health department, which is over-the-counter medicine, and the prescription drug sector, which will be the focus of this strategic analysis. Let's come to the vision. The vision of Merck is to provide the whole world with healthcare. And following that, the mission is to help patients, partners, and communities all around the world in relationship with the so-called 4 A's: affordability, awareness, availability, and accessibility. The values Merck represents are responsibility, integrity, and respect, mostly to their customers, their patients, but also to the environment. Let's have a look at the current development. Around 56% of the total sales come from the prescription drug sector, which is called Merck Serono, but only around 4% come from the consumer health unit. As you can see in the slide, the sale in Europe has decreased by over 27% from 2015 to 2016, which is dramatic for the company because that's their home market and where they have to be really strong. Also, the healthcare department in total the sales of the department have decreased overall from 2015 to 2016. And because this is their main unit, they really have to focus on that and be strong again. Which brings us to the strategic problem of the company, the loss of market share and decreasing sales in Europe, especially in comparison to their rival Bayer, which is a German pharma company as well. And the strategic problem is to regain market share and to stop the decrease in sales in Europe. Let's have a look at the current situation that can be analyzed by an external and internal analysis. So let's start with the external analysis. Let's have a look at the industry Merck is in. The prescription drug pharma industry is struggling right now due to various reasons. First of all, research and development gets more expensive continuously, and there's no guarantee of success when you develop or try to develop a new drug, because it's a very, very difficult process. There are also legal restrictions by governments that limit the development, and the patents that protect drugs have an expiry date, so the lifetime is limited. But then on the other side, the level of income is increasing globally, and developing countries are gaining more and more better access to healthcare, which creates new customer groups for Merck. And then the landscape of the industry itself is changing because, for example, Merck's rival Bayer is on the edge of a merger with Monsanto, another huge player in the industry. So, alright, let's move to the Porter's 5 forces. The threat of substitutes is relatively low in the industry because there are patent protections, there are no real replacements for drugs. So there's a low threat of substitutes because there's no other way to treat the diseases, most of them. The power of the supplier is moderate because there are long-term contracts. There's a dependency on both sides. Merck depends on the suppliers and they also depend on Merck. The power of the customers is relatively low as well because there's patent protections and the customers need the drugs. They don't have a choice. They need it. It's most of the time it's life-saving. So they have to buy it, and most of the time there's no replacement. The threat of new entrants is low as well because there's huge, enormous costs to set up the research and the development departments. And also the networks, the sales and distribution networks, are very expensive and afford and require a high level of tradition and knowledge. But then the industry competition is very high. It's a huge threat to Merck. It's the biggest one, definitely. There's a lot of huge companies in the industry. There's fierce rivalry, there's limited customers, and it's often a race that who is faster to develop a new drug. So let's move to the internal analysis. Let's start with the differentiation strategy. Since the pharma market is too big to cover everything in it, Merck chose a niche strategy, a narrow market strategy. And since cost leadership isn't that important in the industry, but differentiation is, and creating something new is, the strategy Merck chose and has to choose for the future is a narrow scope differentiation focused strategy. Let's come to the SWOT analysis. There's a lot of strength the company has, starting with tradition and reputation. It's the oldest pharmaceutical company in the world. They have a long line of knowledge. Also, the sales and distribution networks long established. They have loyal customers, and the company is an international company. They have a global presence. They have a lot of customers, therefore, and as said before, there's new markets emerging. And also another strength the company has is the collaboration they have with Pfizer, which is another huge pharmaceutical company. They started it in 2014, and both just gained a lot of advantages out of it. Let's come to the weaknesses. The company Merck has a relatively low return on investments, especially compared to Bayer again, which is worrying for possible investors, for example. Also, a lot of patents Merck has right now are expiring in the near future, so the drugs will become free for all and everyone can use the formula to produce them, which is definitely worrying because a lot of revenue comes from that patents. And in the past they had to settle with governments and with citizens that were suing Merck, so they had some legal troubles as well, which is worrying, but most pharmaceutical companies go through it, so they will be alright. Then let's come to the opportunities. Opportunities, definitely more collaborations that they have with Pfizer right now, and the increasing level of income all over the world, basically. And threats, mostly the competition inside the industry, and also legal restrictions from governments, because the pharmaceutical industry is very strictly observed by governments. So let's come to the strategic alternatives. What can Merck do? First of all, they could continue like before. The business is growing, they're financially stable, but on the other hand, the costs will increase, the sales will decrease continuously, and the patents will expire, so they have to do something. So that is not a great idea. Second idea would be merging, merge with another company. Bayer did that, their main rival did that, so it might be a good idea. It definitely increases resources, tangible and intangible resources, but on the other hand, they would have to make compromises. They would lose parts of their culture, of their values, and they would have adapt to new standards. This is a very difficult process. The third alternative would be to form more strategic alliances, like they have now with Pfizer. It's basically a low-risk, high-reward scenario, and as well, you would get more resources, tangible and intangible resources that are really needed at the company right now. But there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that you would develop new drugs even with those resources, and it's really hard to find a suitable partner for that. So that brings us to the fourth strategic alternative, which would be sell the consumer health unit and invest heavily in research and development in the prescription drug sector. The consumer health unit is struggling right now. It's undersized, and high investments would be required. So the solution is to sell the consumer health unit. It's struggling right now. There would be high investments required, and by selling the unit, they could possibly, experts say, up to 4 or 5 billion US dollars. They could use that money to attack Bayer in the prescription drug sector heavily in their home market and regain market share and stop the decrease in sales in Europe. Thank you very much.